today we have not one, but two presenters, Kathleen Fogarty and Susan Thomas. They will be discussing Hildegard von Bingen, who lived in the 1100s. Hildegard was a Christian mystic, Benedictine Abbess, polymath, proficient in philosophy, musical composition, herbology, medieval literature, cosmology, medicine, biology, theology, and natural history. Kathleen Fogarty is the wife of John Wilson. She's a mother, retired librarian, musician, and songwriter. As youth librarian at Princess Anne Library, she created programs for young people, including teaching ukulele in the library. Kathleen's multifaceted career has included singing and songwriting, recording CDs for public release, hosting television and radio programs, and writing feature articles for Tidewater Woman magazine and other publications. She's also active on the board of the Friends of Women's Studies at Old Dominion University. Susan Thomas is a minister with the Fellowship of the Inner Light and its longest continuously active member, having been with the church since 1973. She's a professional musician, music teacher, Inner Light Consciousness Guide, our office manager, editor of the newsletter, church housekeeper, mother, and grandmother. Last but not least, she currently serves on the Pastoral Council and has in the past served on the Board of Directors and taught Sunday school at the Fellowship. Susan composes music, both instrumental and vocal, and played violin with the Virginia Symphony for many years. She's taught chorus, general music, and string orchestra in various private and public schools. She teaches violin, viola, cello, bass, piano, and voice. So prepare yourselves to learn about the life and works of Hildegard von Bingen.
Thank you, Lloyd. Well, Kathleen and I are very happy to be here today. I had heard of Hildegard von Bingen when I took music history. Everybody that studies that would learn about her when I was in college. But it was about 15 years ago. Penny Mullis was telling us about her at one of our lunches, and it renewed my interest in studying her. And so a couple of times I've done something about Hildegard here. But when we got together, it was like magic, wasn't it, Kathleen? Because this woman's legacy is still here of love and creativity and that which works in life. And so we felt moved to share some things about her today. I'll share some aspects. Kathleen will share others. We'll do some things together. And we'll even allow Lloyd to come up here and surprise you with something later. Yeah, that has to do with this. Okay. But anyway, what I want to do is give you just a little bit of bio first. She was born in Germany in 1098, and she died in 1170. What's amazing to me, I don't know about you all, but I'm looking for a file or a paper in my house. Where is it? Where's my stuff in the closet? But somehow her stuff has survived all these centuries due to very mindful people that placed it in a safe abbey. And so there's a lot of things that we can avail ourselves of, which is wonderful. Lloyd had mentioned some of this, but she was definitely a Christian mystic, a Benedictine Abbess. She loved learning about everything. She was proficient in philosophy, music composition, herbology, very good with herbs, medicine, medieval literature, cosmology, biology, theology, and natural history. Now, she was born to a very wealthy family, and she was the 10th child. And the custom of the day was you tithe that child to the church. So they got to be a certain age, usually around 8. They would go live in the abbey, and an older nun would then care for the child and raise them up in the church. And that's what happened to Hildegard. But Hildegard was a woman who began having visions and visions of light at the age of 3. As she told people looking back on her life, it wasn't until she was 42 years old that she began to share the visions. For one thing, back in those days, it was kind of dangerous to be out of the box, especially when you were a woman. So she kept it in, just spoke with a couple of people. But there were other priests and nuns who were really blessed by when she started to share. And Volmar, a monk, came forward and became her scribe. So that she began her first book, the SCIVIAS, which Kathleen has the book right there. She'll be telling you more about that later and some of the things in that. She actually wrote 2 medical texts, and 3 books she wrote of visions and prophecies. One of the first mystery plays, at least that we can find from way back when. And she wrote instrumental music, a lot of it, and songs, and letters. And she consulted with many wise people. Back when she lived, there were basically 2 options, major options for women. You either married or you went to live in the abbey, in the convent. And one of the positives of going to the convent is you could study intellectual stuff there that was often not available to women just out in the town. I mean, many of them didn't read and write. And, and she was able to learn by being there. And more importantly, it's not what you know, but how you use it. And she certainly used it in a loving and healing way. And we just keep being amazed. I'm looking at Kathleen because it's like you can feel her presence when you start to study about her. Yeah, it's very powerful, very palpable. So she sometimes had people that were jealous of her, it was a patriarchal type hierarchy in the church at the time. But little by little, the priests and even a pope recognized her visions as real. Okay? And literally as late as 2012, the Catholic Church made her a saint and a doctor of the church, of which there's only 3 others. And I'm not sure what you have to be a doctor of the church, but it's a major thing, I'm sure. Now, she refused to be defined by the patriarchal hierarchy of the church at the time. She said it didn't serve anybody, men or women, for it to be like that. And she did abide by its strictures, but she pushed the established boundaries for women almost past their limits. And she was an intellectual with a devotion to God and service to others. And she was protected at times by her scribe Volmar. There was a knight. I think James Yax knew the name of that man. Do you remember, James? There was a knight that befriended her and kind of protected her if she traveled, that kind of thing. And then there was also a couple of priests. And so one of the things she did that was very different for the women who lived in the convent was open up all kinds of new expression for them. None of this, never smiling, must suffer as our dear Lord did kind of energy. No. She felt that the cosmos laughs, God laughs, Jesus laughs, and joy is our birthright. She had women in the convent letting their hair down, putting on costumes, doing plays. Yeah, so you'll hear more about that from Kathleen. She did a huge amount of music and felt that there's music of heaven in all things. So I'm just going to talk about one of her visions, and then I'm going to share a little bit of music with you that was prompted by her. In Hildegard's vision, people are created beings. They're the handiwork of God. And in her view, the goal and purpose of humanity is to work with and upon nature. Anyone who puts their trust and belief in God would necessarily have to respect nature, because nature was created to support and protect humanity. She did not see us as separate from nature, just that man gets out of touch with it and the connection. She felt that the human body was made from the same elements as the universe: earth, air, fire, and water, and that men and women were jointly responsible to sustain and support each other. Life is called, she calls it, change in the form of time. Interesting, isn't it? Another way of talking about time and space. She said life is change in the form of time, and it's meant to be lived in harmony with the cosmos, the forces of nature, and each other. A lot of her work led to the modern day, what is it that Elizabeth does? Homeopathy, herbology, ideas that were way ahead of her time. She didn't have microscopes, but she knew a whole lot of things that helped people with blood pressure and everything else. So, indeed, doctor of the church. And she had a lot of joy in growing things. But anyway, the one thing I want to focus on is the music part. She felt there's music in all things. That sound, even when you can't hear it, is there. And that's how it all got started. In the beginning, there was the word. That has to do with sound emanating. And while we're here, we can hear certain sounds. And we find that these sounds enliven us, heal us, help us have fun. There's so many different kinds of music in every genre that is wonderful for whatever you're doing at the time. But she was somebody who thought in music. She really just, and she said that even the songs, the words are important, but it's the music that goes beyond, that speaks where words could not go. That words just point the way, but it's the tune that carries it, the vibration. So what she sometimes did was she played the psaltery. Okay, it was an instrument that was used back then, and it was a stringed instrument. And sometimes she would just improvise on it because she felt something. And then, of course, that's a form of composing. But she would do that in order to center herself, relax herself, and open to visions. And so I got tweaked this week because I had a lot going on. Was not planning to do this part, but I'm going to do it because we have a new term today. We're Hildegarding it, right? So I'm going to just get the violin, and I'm going to just tune into all of you, because we're all in the same circle. We're all in the same vibration, and let that feed a mode that she liked that I will play in, and play a tune, or a little tune, just a short little tune. So if you want, you can close your eyes or not, and just know that you're part of the whole, you're part of the music of the cosmos. And now, part of Hildegard's groupies,
Yeah, we are. HGs.
she's coming up to
Well,
share some awesome stuff with
well,
you.
the thing I want to say in a conversation with you is most of the things that you said are things I was also saying too. So here's what I'm going to do. In the spirit of Hildegard, I'm going to let Hildegard speak.
Uh-huh.
I think that that's probably a great way to go. All of the things Susan talked about was for you to understand that this was a woman who had so many gifts and talents, so many, and she lived to be 81. We're talking about in the 11th century. That was no little feat. So one of the things that I want to say to you all is that learning about her, trying to get what she thought about and what was really like being in school all week. And we know about the earth. We know about what she cared about. We might call her the founder of the environmental movement, but one of the things she talked about was something called viriditas. And because she was of the generation that learned Latin and the Mass was in Latin back then, she used Latin all the time. So viriditas is the greening power of the earth and what she thought of as divine vitality. So what she was not wanting people to do was to disappear into the ethos with your spirituality. She wanted our spirituality. It was the old be here now saying. Yeah, she believed in that. So we're not supposed to just disappear. Even when we go up the mountain, we come down again. And she really believed that. Well, oh, okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Well, I was kind of wanting to talk with you. But at any rate, she was acknowledged by so many as a natural doctor. So people in the villages, if they had things going on with them, they went to her. And she also, one of the books that Susan mentioned was called Causes and Cures. And that particular book was based on her own experiences when she was ill, when she recovered, what she did. And I think because of that, she was actually rooting herself in trusting her own inner knowledge, which I think we all should take a lesson from. So one of the things about Hildegard that I find, for me, the most fascinating is, all of us have talents. All of us have gifts. She used her gifts in the service of advancing her spirituality and also helped her postulants, the young nuns and the nuns that have been there a while, by these plays that Susan talked about. One of the most important one was about virtues. And the virtues she wrote about were the things she believed in with her whole heart. And one of the ones she said was the most important was humility, which is why we sang the song about walking humbly with God. So here's what she said about it. I am the pillar of humble minds and the slayer of proud hearts. I began at the lowest point and ascended the steep slope to heaven. But Lucifer raised himself above himself and fell beneath himself. She did talk about him. Whoever wishes to imitate me and be my child and embrace me as a mother and carry out my work, let him start at the foundation and gradually mount upward from virtue to virtue with a sweet and tranquil mind. For anyone who tries to ascend by taking hold of the highest branch of the tree first will more often than not swiftly fall. But anyone who begins his ascent at the root will not fall so easily if he proceeds with caution. She also, I will let you just, also, that with the SCIVIAS book, this was a lifetime thing. And as Susan said, she had this wonderful friend whose monk was named Valmar. And then there was a man named Gottfried of St. Disibod, which was one of the other monasteries nearby. And then a Belgian monk named Joubert. And in addition, she dictated her thoughts to a young woman who was of a very, very rich background. Her name was, let's see now, what was her name? Ricardus von Stade. And she was from a super rich family in Germany. But this girl wanted to leave her family and come to the convent and live with Hildegard. She was so inspired by her. They had a very intense relationship, sort of mother and daughter in a way. Her brother was a very big high muckety-muck as well. He decided that his sister was old enough to be an abbess herself. So he sent her away to another convent and installed her as the abbess. At this point, Hildegard wrote every letter she could to all the ruling people and all the people in the different churches. And also, she was just heartbroken when Ricardus was gone. And unfortunately, Ricardus died when she was 28, not long after being installed there. So Hildegard herself experienced heartbreak, sadness, and humility. She also believed that each of us was given a treasure inside our souls and that we have a mandate to produce good works from what has been placed in us. So here's another reading of her. I'd rather read her than me. If someone who loved you very much gave you a treasure and said to you, "Profit from this, enrich yourself, so that it may be known who gave you this treasure," you would have to consider it very carefully. You would have to ponder on how to make the best out of it and say to yourself, "I should make the best possible with my Lord's treasure, and he too may be praised for it." And after it was thus increased to advantage and you had multiplied it, a good report would come back to the ears of the one who had given it to you, and he would think of you because of it and love you and confer greater gifts on you. This is what your Creator does. So that reminded me a lot of the parable of the talents from Matthew 25, in which a master gives talents to the servants and goes away, and when he comes back, he discovers who is using their talents, who has multiplied them, and who has buried them. Hildegard made so much use of her talents and interests, she multiplied them because they grew for others to learn. So she wasn't doing it about, look at me, look at me. It's all about the me. Not very much like modern society where anytime somebody does anything, we do this, look at me. Hildegard knew Latin as a Catholic, but because the prayers in the Mass were done in Latin, she used German in her artwork. And we'd like to invite our friend Lloyd to read some German. Yeah.
Well, we have a couple of readings here. Since Hildegard worked in German language, of course, I'll read them each one first in the German and then in the English. Der Mensch, voller schöpferischen Möglichkeiten, ist Gottes Werk. Nur der Mensch ist berufen, Gott zu unterstützen. Der Mensch ist berufen, mitzugestalten. Mit Hilfe der Natur kann der Mensch alles Notwendige und Lebenserhaltende in die Schöpfung einbringen. Und jetzt auf Englisch. Humankind, full of all creative possibilities, is God's work. Humankind alone is called to assist God. Humankind is called to co-create. With nature's help, humankind can set into creation all that is necessary and life-sustaining. And another reading. Ich bin das feurige Leben des Essens Gottes. Ich bin die Flamme über die Schönheit in den Feldern. Ich leuchte in Wasser. Ich brenne in der Sonne, dem Mond und der Sternen. Und mit dem leichten Wind erquicke ich alles lebenswichtig durch ein unsichtbares, allumfassendes Leben. I am the fiery life of the essence of God. I am the flame above, the beauty in the fields. I shine in the waters, I burn in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And with the airy wind I quicken all things vitally by an unseen, all-sustaining life.
Yeah. So I had another song chosen, but I'm going to save that for the offertory. I do want to say one more thing before Susan and I conclude, and that is that as someone who, I'm going to just be honest, struggles with the form my spirituality takes over my lifetime. I'll be 70 in August. I was raised a Roman Catholic. I had no bad experiences. I had lovely experiences. I played the guitar in church, and so I don't have those feelings. And I love coming to the fellowship because it sort of opens me up. But I will say one thing that I've never seen anywhere until I read Hildegard was that it's okay to have an intellect. It's okay to use your mind. You do not have to deposit your thinking self to be spiritual. And here's what she said. The intellect is joined to the soul like an arm to the body. For as the arm joined to the hand with its fingers branches out from the body, so the intellect, working with the other powers of soul, by which it understands human actions, most certainly proceeds from the soul. For before all the other powers of the soul, it understands whatever it is in human works, whether good or evil, so that through it, as through a teacher, everything is understood, for it sifts things as wheat is purified of any foreign matter, inquiring whether or not it is useful or useless. Thus, as food without salt is tasteless, the other powers of the soul without the intellect are insipid and undiscerning. But the intellect is also to the soul, as the shoulder is to the body, is strong, so it understands the divinity and the humanity in God, which is the joint of the arm, and has true faith in its work, which is in the joint of the hand, with which it chooses among the various works as wisely as if fingers. But it does not work in the same way as the other powers of the soul. So I found that in this book, I know it's time to wrap up. Sorry, he's giving me messages. This book is called SCIVIAS, and this was written over many, many, many years, and it does include big descriptions of her visions and many, many ways that Hildegard thought about things. Not all of them were easy either. I started to tell Susan, she was hard when it came to some of her practices. You know, she did not want the nuns to hurt themselves, though. I know a lot of you may have heard, oh, the nuns and the priests, and they hurt themselves. She did not like that. In fact, the woman who cared for her, who was named Jutta, who was almost a saint as well, when she died, she found that she had been wrapping herself with very scary things, some binding with, things in them. And she did not want anybody to do that to their bodies. So let's enjoy our bodies, and we're going to do some last readings. And as an end of our program today, we have cookies that are of Hildegard's recipe.
Small meditation.
Yeah.
Well, this is perfect. Let me get here for a second. After these are some main quotes that really jumped out at us that we're going to just alternate reading. And then we're going to hear, it's just about a 3-minute a musical piece of hers, instrumental with a cello playing in the background while I just say a few of her words for a small meditation. We're doing that now instead of earlier in the service. And you get to tell them about the cookies before we leave. There's a story about that too. So, okay. All right.
I say, there is the music of heaven in all things.
We cannot live in a world that is not our own, in a world that is interpreted for us by others. An interpreted world is not a home.
Part of the terror is to take back our own listening, to use our own voice, to see our own light.
Like billowing clouds, like the incessant gurgle of the brook, the longing of the spirit can never be stilled.
The earth which sustains humanity must not be injured. It must not be destroyed.
Humanity, take a good look at yourself. Inside, you've got heaven and earth and all of creation. You're a world. Everything is hidden in you.
And this one we heard before, but we're saying it again. She is so bright and glorious that you cannot look at her face or her garments for the splendor with which she shines.
And this is about creative possibilities. Humankind, full of all creative possibilities, is God's work. Humankind alone is called to assist God. Humankind co-creates with nature's help humankind can set into creation all that's necessary, all that's life-sustaining. The truly holy person welcomes all that is earthly.
A human being is a vessel that God has built for himself and filled with his inspiration so that his works are perfected in it.
All right, so now you've heard a lot of some things today that ring true with all of you, I'm sure. And some of these principles have been felt and said by others through the eons of time. But we focused on this woman and what she brought in today. And for you to enjoy, we didn't mention that much about her art. There's some of her mandalas are up there for you to see, to enjoy. Before we go to the next thing, after that, Kathleen will come up to tell you about cookies of joy. That's what she called them. All right. It's a quick little thing. Yeah.
We have the rest there too. Yeah. Let's see if I can find. Here it is, Cookies of Joy, right here. I got it. I got it. I'm sorry. These people that do these talks, they're so special. I think they're so special. All right. Cookies of Joy. For those of you who are vegan, I'm sorry. Back in the day when she was alive, she loved in Germany and in Europe, they loved butter, they loved the honey from the bees, they loved the eggs from the chickens, so that's all there, along with almond flour, ground almonds, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, and cardamom, salt, and baking soda. So this particular recipe, she wrote, she said, eating these biscuits helps to slow the aging process, creates a cheerful countenance, lightened a heavy heart, and released one's full intellectual potential. Eat them often, she wrote, they will calm every bitterness of your heart and mind, and your hearing and senses will open. Your mind will be joyous, your senses purified, and all harmful humors will diminish, making you efficient, strong, and happy. So she called them cookies of joy. So Susan made some, and I made some, and they're both
different recipes.
Yeah, slightly different,
The same.
but both from her. So anyway, just know that at the end of the service, when you go out, it's there.